before we get started here, Blackboard, we just wanted to welcome the National Juneteenth Observation Foundation to share the history and cultural significance of Juneteenth, including red food, tea cakes, and other traditions. Today we have joining us Willie Esther Williams, the State Director for Nebraska and New Mexico, who will discuss traditional Juneteenth food, including red food. Miss Etha Robinson, I believe, is on the call. She's a retired culinary teacher and the founder of Mrs. Robinson's Tea Cakes, which, fun fact, is recognized as the official cookie of Juneteenth. I'll be dropping that link in just a few minutes for any of our foodies that want to order some. And then we have Miss Dee Evans, who is the National Communications Director. And she's going to start us off here, just sharing some of her knowledge about Juneteenth and the rich history behind it. So, Miss Dee Evans, I will turn it over to you, and I really appreciate you taking the time today. I know this is your busiest time of year.
Thank you for inviting us. Thank you for allowing us to speak about Juneteenth. Normally, you start Juneteenth speaking about June 19th, 1865, but I want to take it back just a shade. I want to take it back to August of 1619. Now, in August of 1619, this is when the first Africans landed on the English colony shores. We did have Africans in the South and Florida and the lower area of the country, but 1619 is when they first were brought into the country on the East Coast. Now, at that time, they were brought in from a pirate ship. Um, it's either two or three ships. We're still trying to clarify, but they had been traded off in Africa, and normally that occurred because they were probably the losers in an area war, and where they take prisoners. The prisoners were transferred over to the Spanish or the Dutch, and in this case they were brought in. They were on a pirate ship, and our understanding is that a second ship rescued them from the pirate ship. Now, some stories say that the ship just changed flags and it's the same ship. So we really have not confirmed that part yet. But they came in the middle of August, approximately the 24th of August in 1619. They were not enslaved. They were indentured. They came in and they had to agree to a certain amount of time, 7 to 10 years, to pay for their food, their clothing, their overhead. And at the end of their indenturement, they were free. They married. They had other indentured people working for them. They were able to buy property. So that is where we start the Juneteenth story in 1619. Uh, we did not really have a court order that enslaved people until 1705. And at that time, there was a court order where someone was enslaved for life in Virginia, and it passed on from that point across the country. So 1705 is where the enslavement starts. And then you go 160 years to Galveston, Texas. Now, when you get to Galveston, we have to take that back a step also. We start, that's part of the story, May 25th, 1865, when a number of ships left Point Comfort, Virginia, now known as Hopewell, Virginia, and they were en route to the Texas-Mexico border to fight Maximilian, who was giving some problems to the Hispanic community, as well as sending everything he could get his hands on back to Europe. Uh, at that time, May 25th is when they embarked on the ships, and there were approximately 40 ships, from my understanding. And on those 40 ships, we had approximately 6,000 United States colored troops. Now, the United States colored troops uh, had been allowed to enlist. Again, General Granger, Gordon Granger, was picked up after they left Virginia, and they ran into a storm. So when they ran into the storm, they needed food and supplies. So at this time, they pulled into Galveston Bay, which is an island. Previous stories has had it that General Granger rode in on a horse, climbed up on the balcony, and said, "You're free." We have disproven this story over the years from the descendants in Galveston, Texas. As it occurs, the ship came in. The soldiers got off the ship while they were loading it. They walked through the town. And you have to understand that the Black enslaved people, this is 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, had never seen Black men with any power. Here we have Black men that come in uniform. They have gold buttons on their jacket. They have their guns on their shoulder, and they're marching proudly through Galveston. So they went through Galveston. They came back and said, General Granger, if you don't do something before we leave here, we will. The people in Galveston knew they were free as of the Emancipation Proclamation. However, it only applied to the 11 states, Confederate states, I want to point out. However, this was the farthest point from Washington, and this is where the slave owners sent their slaves because they knew that there were very few military members there to enforce the Emancipation Proclamation. So June 19th, 1865 is the first time that there's enough military, enough soldiers to say, you are going to be free. So General Granger had Major Emory write General Order number 3, and that was posted on the door of the Little Colored Church, which is now known as Reedy Chapel. So we have a strong connection to the military. We have a strong connection to the church. But and the General Order number 3 states, you are now free. Go back to where you have been. You are now employees. You will get a check. You will get paid. You cannot stand around and at the fort. You cannot stand here and run your mouth. You got to work, but you're going to get paid. What they did not tell you was now that you are workers and not slaves, you're going to have to pay for the building that you're sleeping in. You're going to have to pay for the roof over your head. You're going to have to pay for your food. You're going to have to pay for your clothing. And so this is where sharecropping came in later because now we had to be able to grow our own crops and share them with the slave owner at the company store to pay for our needs. And so that was part of that story. Going forward, they did start to migrate from Galveston to the north, and the first actual recognition, the first celebration of Juneteenth is said to be January 1st, 1866, at the old country building, the old court building, where they marched from the courthouse to Reedy Chapel. So that was January 1866. However, Native Americans still were holding some of our people enslaved. They did not sign off on uh, a treaty. We had 5 tribes signs off on treaties giving freedom to the people that they were holding in June of 1866. So at that time, we had no place to go. The U.S. government did not want us involved to be involved with us. The Indians did not want us, and we went forward and we started our own towns. In the Western Territory alone, we created 100 Black towns, uh, of which 12 are still in existence. 3 of them you would know: Muskogee, Tulsa, and Rentersville. But overall in this country, we had 1,300 Black communities or settlements that we started, and another one would be Seneca Village, which is where Central Park is now at in New York. Um, we have been the people that did the work. We were also the inventors because we had to make things easy for ourselves. We had to go forward and we did the building. We took care of the children. And the one thing is, slavery has always been in existence. If you go to the Bible, there was slavery. However, the difference with the American chattel slavery is they separated families. They changed our names. They took away our religion. They did not allow us to read and write. And therefore, to this day, we are still trying to put together the family records. We are still trying to find the branches of the families that were sent to other states, including the northern states where they actually rented us out. The northern factories and plants of farms signed contracts, a 1 year contract where they actually rented people from the South to do the work in the North. And of course, you don't hear about that. Uh, you think that the slavery was only in the South. No, it was in the entire country. When we were allowed to join the military, we had U.S. colored troops from um, New York, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Indiana, and several other states that were able to join the colored troops in exchange for their freedom. And after the war, they proceeded to go to the Western territories. They became known as the Buffalo Soldiers. As the Buffalo Soldiers, they became the first firefighters in our park districts, our parks and forests. They were the firefighters. If you go forward to 1944, they were in Alaska, and they built the Alcan Highway. They had engineers that were not able to build this highway due to issues with the weather, and they brought in black soldiers thinking that they're not going to do any better, but what can we lose? They not only brought in the Alcan Highway, they brought it in ahead of time on the schedule. And they eventually, the engineers, the Buffalo Soldiers, and the U.S. colored troops are now evolved into the Park Service. The Park Service is the organization within the U.S. government that controls the White House grounds. So if you want to do something on the White House, as we had planned to do this year, we have had to work with the Park Service there. We have worked with the Park Service in Virginia for the Shove Off Day in May 25th. And we continue. We are America. There is nothing they can say or do against us that say we are not Americans because we have been here from the Revolutionary War in this country. We have been here the whole time, and we are a Title V holiday. Being a Title V federal holiday means we are on equal grounds with the 4th of July. So we have the first federal holiday in 40 years that came in after Martin Luther King. Now, Nevada takes pride in the fact that you had to have 39 states recognize Juneteenth before you could apply for consideration as a federal holiday. Nevada was the 39th state. We got that day of recognition in 2011, and we went forward for, as I said, nearly 30 years before we advocated enough to get the federal holiday in 2021 with Miss Opal Lee at the side of the president. And Miss Opal, it will be 99 in October. She is one of our board members. And right now we have Day of Recognition in all 50 states and the District of Columbia. Reverend Myers, who was our founder, was responsible for 43 of those states in the District of Columbia. We have Juneteenth state holidays in approximately 28 states. And there are a number of other stories. As I planned on, I believe, 20 minutes that we were going to work. Hopefully, Etha has been able to come in, and Willie can talk to you about the Southern Underground Railroad. And if there's additional time, I can come back and tell you more about the Juneteenth history, if that's okay with you. I'm also open for questions.
That is perfect. Thank you so much. Right now, we don't have any questions in the chat. We do have a lot of comments here. Um, Kimani dropping in a link about Miss Opal Lee. We have people sharing different things about Juneteenth, including photos when they went there, the historical marker and mural for Juneteenth in Galveston. All right, so if we want to go ahead and turn it over to our next speaker and just get a little bit more deeper into our history here.
Next speaker would be Willie Williams, who she is our state director for two. She is the only state director within the organization that has two states. She has Nebraska, she has New Mexico, and she was named to the position by Reverend Ronald V. Myers Sr., who founded the organization, and I believe she is currently still in Nebraska, going over to Albuquerque, New Mexico at the end of the week. But I'm stepping back. Willie, it's on you.
Blessings, everybody. Blessings. I am Miss Willie Williams, State Director for New Mexico and Nebraska. I worked under the leadership, mentorship of Dr. Ronald V. Myers. I've been in this since 2006. Dee did a wonderful job, and a lot today I had a sit down. It was called Let's Talk Juneteenth, where I had to sit down where we talk with our national president, Mr. Steve Williams, as well as Ms. Dee Evans, and Mr. Ernest Laurie from Chesapeake, Virginia, was on. And the crowd from Nebraska, which was a very diverse crowd, older, younger, were all ears. So we're gonna talk about nobody knew that they didn't know, and I found out a little bit later that there were two underground railroads. One that went to Canada and one that went to Mexico, Florida, to Florida. Well, first of all, the Seminoles were our friends in Florida. They helped. Once we made it through Georgia and Carolinas. When I say we, um, I'll just use that metaphorically. I wasn't there, but our forefathers. So I'm gonna put we in there. Okay, is that okay with you guys? Okay. So what we did? Well, let's do they. What they did was once they could get through the Carolinas and Georgia and get to Florida, they were welcomed in. Um, they were welcomed. And Miss D, you can kick in anytime. We can tell this story. I love telling it with you. But at any time you want to say something, you're more than welcome to join me, okay?
Let's tell them. First of all, people know about the Northern Underground Railroad, which went to Canada. It had
Mm-hmm.
conductors. It had buildings. It had bushes.
Yes.
You could hide. You could hide. If you
Yeah.
went to the Northern Territory, you were able to get through there. And we also found we knew that the gospel songs were the ways that they had the maps. We knew that they had the quilts, which had the maps embedded in them. What we have found out in recent years is that the girls' hairstyles,
Yes.
they put the maps in the braids that you could, if you could, the girl could tip her head and they would see where they were going. But getting back to the Southern Underground Railroad, they didn't have all this stuff. They had no trees, they had no bushes, they had a few houses along the river, but mostly they were running for their freedom through open territory. They were going through the desert. They were floating on bales of hay down the river from Texas to Mexico to their freedom. And the other
Yep.
difference is if you went north, there was a good chance that they would capture you and bring you back to enslavement. If you went the southern route,
They would
if you
take you
went
to
that way, the Mexicans were our friends. They had a
yes.
ton. they had a gun where if you came there trying to take somebody back, you may have been shot. They defended the freedom. They I believe they got the freedom from slavery in 1807 in Mexico, and they supported our freedoms.
Yep. And one of the things I did notice that I studied that going toward Florida, they could hide in the swamps also. Now that wasn't the easiest because the Seminoles were our friends also, and they taught them how to get from area to area, and there were swamps. And the main thing is that I'm still, and I discussed this today, that they were at one point, our Florida was at one point with the Seminole Indians and the Mexicans and all that were our friends, but then they succeeded and they became Confederate states. There were 11 of them. Am I correct, Misty?
11 states, yes, ma'am.
And okay, my thing was if they were friendly at first and then they converted to Confederate states, how was the transition? You know? I'm always I'm always looking at things
You're
at
always asking the questions, which
yes
is how
I
we
am.
get our information.
Yeah, how was the transition when they went from being friendly to us and all of a sudden they decided to be join the Confederacy? But one thing I must say, when the U.S. colored troops, when they were coming from Virginia, when they were coming from Virginia, and the U.S. colored troops came to show a force. But if they had any of the communications that they have now, those Confederate states were trying to enlist Maximilian to help them keep slavery in those states. Now, just think if they had a cell phone, if they had a beeper, a pager. I mean, seriously, just think, where would we be? Where would we be? And that's something to think about. And then the next thing to think about is at one point you were cool with me. At one point we were all right. We were you all were protecting us, saving us, helping us. And now you join the Confederacy. How am I supposed to feel about that? How am I supposed to take that?
Well,
Just a question. Just Miss Willie with the questions.
it's
I'm
like
always full
everything
of
else. There are
questions.
two sides to every story. There are
Yeah.
always two sides, so we don't know. I mean, even during the Civil War, we were brothers against one side was on the Confederates, one brother was with the was the loyalists, the United States troops. So we really can't say it's if it was money, if it was really what they believe. It's as we are today. We have families who we have people who voted and suddenly said, "Is this what I voted for?" They're ready to change. I have politicians, elected officials here in Nevada. They have dropped out of their party and gone independent because they cannot even explain what's going on right now. So we can't really say, but we in Mexico we do have the Moscagos that are
Yeah.
celebrating Juneteenth in Mexico. We still have Canadians that are recognizing Juneteenth. Juneteenth is an international holiday. Uh, we have Japan having their fourth year of events in Japan recognizing Juneteenth. We have people in Guam who have been doing it for about 15 years now. We have Ghana, Uganda, and Germany all having Juneteenth events around the world. So, and also the United Nations has made June 19th World Sickle Cell Day.
Well,
And
yep.
sickle cell, if you're not aware of it, is a disease that is with the dark complected people primarily. So this is something else that we work with. We do have someone within the communities that that's speaking on sickle cell, and we do have representatives in all 50 states. Some states like California, Texas, Illinois may have 3 or 4 different representatives, and then we have Willie gets to be a half of New Mexico and a half of Nebraska. But
Yep.
Willie, if it's okay, I
Can I
can
talk
we
about the foods? I just want to talk about the foods for just a minute.
But
Can I talk about
I
the
was going
foods?
to ask, can we bring Miss Issa in to talk about the tea cakes and then come back and you can expand on the food from the tea cakes? Would
Yeah.
that be okay, Destiny?
That's perfect. We actually have a couple questions, if you don't mind, before we
Okay,
bring in Miss Etha here.
okay.
So just a couple questions we got in the chat so far. Do you have any insight into what brought together these cross-cultural bonds? All of these other countries celebrating Juneteenth with us. Do we know how that started? Why it started?
I can tell you about Japan for one place. Malcolm Adams out of Nebraska. I'm sorry, it was
Nebraska.
out of Nebraska. He went to Japan 40 years ago to set up CNN Japan. He never came home. He was a newsman, a journalist, and he decided he liked Japan, and he stayed there. He married. He had children. He comes back. He has grandchildren in California. He's been here to Nevada to speak for my group. But I can tell you that is what we have in Japan. For Guam, the gentleman there is from Texas. So uh, I have spoken to him over the years, and he will be coming back to this country, but he laid the groundwork for Guam to have their events, which has been about 15 years now. Going forward, Uganda, we just had a representative. He is an African. He is our representative in North Dakota. He went back to Uganda last month, and he said he came back. They will be celebrating Juneteenth in Uganda. Germany, we have the people. They are on the military basis. So the people who are sent over to Germany to serve, they are the ones that's bringing up the Juneteenth commemorations and celebrations in Germany. And of course, we do have Alaska. We do have Hawaii, which are not connected, but we have representatives there. As a matter of fact, Alaska, no, Japan, no, sorry, Hawaii.
Hawaii.
They were the last state to recognize Juneteenth with a day of observance, and they recognized it also on the same day that we got the national holiday, June 17th, 2021. So they were the last one for the states. As I said, we now have 28 state holidays. We have a couple of county holidays. If you go to Illinois, you've got Cook County that has holidays there, as well as the city of Chicago. So we are represented, and this is how it happens: word of mouth, people migrating. In the 60s, Juneteenth had kind of died down in the early 1900s, but the civil rights movement, which would not have existed if we were still enslaved, brought back Juneteenth to the community when they did the march in Washington on Juneteenth. So, and everybody went home and talked about it. So that's how Juneteenth has spread.
Yep.
All right. Thank you for that. And then we got one more question before we turn it over to Miss Etha here. Um, People are wondering, why isn't the Southern Railroad discussed or taught more frequently? Because a lot of people did not know that there were two of them.
That's what today when we were discussing that today in the talks. A lot of people did not know it. As we did our research, that's how we found out more so in-depth research. And really, we're still digging into history as far as the National Juneteenth. We're the historians, we're the educators. So as we learn, you all will learn, and we're sending the message out. Yes, there were two railroads. Yes, there were two underground railroads. And a lot of us did not know it, but that's where research comes in.
That's great. Thank you so much. And then Miss Eva, if you want to tell us more about these wonderful tea cakes that I honestly did not know about until speaking with you all.
Good morning, or should I say good afternoon? I'm
Good
Ethan Robinson.
afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Ethan Robinson, hailing from a place called Yazoo City, Mississippi, not too far from where Dr. Ronald Myers lived and practiced medicine. But anyway, the history of the tea cake goes all the way back to slavery. Most of our ancestors, especially from the southern states, made the tea cake. And the history lies in the fact that we imitated many of the items that the Europeans had. And of course, we did not have all the ingredients to make the original tea cake. But Dr. Myers decided to name the tea cake or declare it the official cookie of Juneteenth. Of course, it goes all the way back to slavery. And of course, the tea cake is older than the Oreo. One of the things I think that's important to know is that initially our ancestors could not read or write. So they passed down the recipes word of mouth, a handful of this, a smidgen of that, a pinch of that. So there were no measuring cups to measure these ingredients. But they thought highly enough of the concept to pass it down word of mouth. They usually when they did start were able to write, they called them receipts instead of recipes. And so they would, someone would watch them and then try to take measurements to create a recipe. But initially, the tea cake was patterned in a sense after the English of the European tea cake, which is really a cupcake. If you look at the English cupcake, it's called a tea cake, but it's actually a cake. The tea cake that we made in the South was really a cookie. We didn't have the same ingredients, so we used lard or flour or molasses or whatever we had to make the tea cake. And of course, the ancestors they would my mother made them and they kept them in a jar, and it was like the treat of the day when you were able to get a tea cake. So if we look at most or almost any ethnic group, there's usually foods that are related to their celebrations or to their historical contributions. When we think of the fortune cookie, we of course think of the Chinese. When we think of the bagel, we think of what Jewish people. So the tea cake sort of is a combination of the European tea cake and then of course the way that the slaves made it. There was a book called Christmas Gift by Charlotte May Rollins, and she was a librarian, and she was interested in writing stories about the children. And so tea cakes was one of the things that the slaves would give to one another during Christmas. They couldn't go to Walmart's or Newberry's and buy Christmas gifts, so it was customary for the slave masters to allow the enslaved to make tea cakes during Christmas time, and you would put them in a flour bag or a little flour sack or something. We didn't have lunch pails. And then when people would come by, when you were allowed to visit other people on the plantations, they would say Christmas gift. And you would, of course, pull out your little bag of tea cakes and give it to the person as a means of giving them a Christmas present. The recipes, of course, vary because uh, uh, during slavery, uh, various enslaved people had different ingredients. Some people may have had molasses, some people may have had sugar. Many of them didn't have the nutmeg or the seasoning that we use. So they used the ingredients that were at hand to make the tea cake. And of course, for a long time, they were just made, on the plantations. And many times, as we during the during the migration, we didn't always take these recipes along with us. So oftentimes, the tea cake recipes were forgotten. So when you go into a grocery store, you may see a tortilla or you may see a bagel, but you're very hard pressed to find a tea cake. So I think that it's important that we uh, show the worthiness of the tea cake by honoring our ancestors and continuing to make this delightful product. When Dr. Myers, when I met him first back in I guess the early 90s, he and his family came to stay with us for a few days in Los Angeles. That's actually when I first met him. And he said, "Well, why not we make the tea cake the official cookie of the black fam of Juneteenth?" Also, I talked to uh, uh, Alex Haley. I got a chance to go to a book signing, and he talked about the fact that his grandmother made the tea cakes. I don't know if you, I know everybody knows about Alex Haley. Then there was another one of our spiritual composers, Dr. Juster Harrison. He also said he remembered his grandmother making the tea cake, and so it's historically been in our families, but oftentimes since we have not been I guess you want to say monetizing it. Many of our young people are not aware of the tea cake. It's simply a simple cookie. The thing about most ethnic foods, when they originated, they were very simple because the indigenous people at that time, or the people who were native or who were in that area, didn't always have the ingredients so that the middle class or the upper class people had. So they had to use whatever they had to create the products. So the tea cake, of course, sort of became the treat that we look forward to having as children. And when I came to Los Angeles, my sisters and I opened up a restaurant, and one of the things we wanted to have was to have some of the items that our ancestors had given us. So we started making the tea cake, and found out that many of the people had not had tea cakes for years because, of course, not of course, but as we came to the city, we sort of left a lot of our practices down south. When we left, they said we could leave the cotton fields. Of course, we threw down the hole and we left a lot of other things at the end of the road when we left those southern states. We didn't. I guess you would say lack of. I won't say worthiness, but we didn't see the value in the products oftentimes that our ancestors had made. So it was very important. I think it's very important for all of us to honor them. In other words, whatever your ancestors gave you, I think it's important that we take it to another level. So that's what we want to do with the tea cake. We want to make the tea cake the official cookie of any celebration, especially that had to do with our plight in this country and the heritage that our ancestors left them. Most of the people, if you talk to your elders, they will tell you that they had the tea cake. During the time that my grandmother made them, she didn't have a mixer or hand mixer, Hamilton beat. She made everything by hand, and she had a little. It was like a big crock dish, and she was kind of mix everything in there with her hand, and roll the tea cakes out and cut them out. So as we move through modern conveniences, of course we're doing it a little bit differently. But I think it's very important to hold those concepts that our ancestors gave us close at heart. So the tea cake, in and of itself, stands for the concept that our ancestors felt that what they had was important enough for them to pass it down to us. Now, our chore or our task is to make certain that that it's taken to another level. When my grandmother made the tea cake, she didn't put it in a package or put a label on it. She put it in a jar. And every chance we got, we would go in there and maybe steal a few out of the jar or the tin can that she kept them in. But so now we want to take the tea cake and put in a nice package, put a label on it, and then sell it. So in other words, we want to dignify the products that our ancestors gave us by monetizing it as well. Because one of the things that ancestors give you is a way to take what items we've had, music, dance, canning, and take it to another level where we can create jobs. Because I think that's very important. If you don't monetize your culture, I say turning culture into cash. I think that's very vital for a people is to take their culture, enhance it, take it to another level, and then monetize it so that we can create jobs about it around that particular product, as well as let the rest of the world know that these are the contributions that our ancestors made even long before the 21st century all the way back to slavery. And the slaves would take the tea cakes on journeys. When we were traveling on the Greyhound bus or the uh, Continental Trailways, when you went on the bus, you didn't have a lunch bag. You had either a shoebox or a brown paper bag with some fried chicken, pound cake, and if you were lucky, you may have had some tea cakes in it. So these were things that we took, and many of us were ashamed of those items because we said that they were homemade. Now, when you make something homemade, It's called what? Gourmet. You pay 3 times as much for something that's homemade or gourmet as you do something that came by that was made by that was mass manufactured. So we can take the tea cake and take it to another level, make certain that our young people, as well as the rest of the world, know about the tea cake, know that our ancestors, even in spite of not being able to write or read at that time, they were able to take that risk, take it, the concept, and pass it down word of mouth. I think there's a lot of the things that we have that we don't really understand how it came about, but someone kept that alive because we know at one time it was what? Illegal to teach Black people how to write, how to read, and how to write. So how are they going to pass this information down to the next generation? Next generation, only what? Through word of mouth. And somewhere along the line, we had to write about it. And it's interesting. I think if we realize that even though that these products we didn't receive a lot of credit for the things that we did, someone wrote them down somewhere. Someone has written these things down. So when we start digging up things about our history and about our contributions, we were able to go to the library, to the libraries of congressional records or wherever, and we can always find some of this information. There's a lady who's written a book called Tea Cakes for Tosh. In other words, where she talks about a young man whose grandmother made tea cakes, and along the way she had Alzheimer's, and he had watched her enough to be able to make the tea cake recipe and make the tea cakes for her. So how are we going to value the items that our ancestors gave us? As simple as it is, it still has a great deal of I think of a worthiness to us as a people that we keep those things alive and that we turn them into things that the rest of the world can hear and know about. So we want to say thanks to Dr. Myers for allowing the tea cake to be called the official cookie of Juneteenth. So we want to celebrate the tea cake, and so we are putting forth a launching, and we are going to be needed to take the concept of the tea cake and take it as she talked about food. In other words, to have food products, you must have a place to what? To make those products. You can't make them in your kitchen. You got to have a commercial kitchen. So what we want to do is we want to use the tea cake sort of as a fundraising lever to raise money so that we can build a commercial kitchen where we can I've canned chow chow, I canned jams and preserves and things that our ancestors made. So it wasn't just a tea cake. The tea cake is just a cookie in that sense. But there are other items that our ancestors made that are now being monetized. Knott's Berry Farm was built off of what? Jams and jellies. Smuckers is still around. These are businesses that are hundreds of years old. But there is no tea cake business that's 100 years old. Why not? Because we have to honor that. And until we take that uh, baton and make it worthy and raise it high for the rest of the world, it's going to go unnoticed. So it's left up to us to make the world, we call it taking a bite of history by using the tea cake. It's more than a cookie, it's an experience. So when you eat the tea cake, you don't just think about the fact that you're enjoying it. You're thinking about Big Mama and M, as we call them, Grandma, Aunt Susie, Uncle Tom, because Uncle James, whoever made the tea cakes. It wasn't just the women. Men, many men were cooks. So the tea cake, we want that to be the official cookie of many of our celebrations. So enjoy, enjoy. And so we want you to look up the website, mrsrobinsonsteacakes.com, and you can see where you're able to order the tea cakes. And check around your community. Talk to the elderly, especially the women and men who are in the convalescent home. And they'll tell you that somebody in their family made the tea cakes. So we want to enjoy the tea cake. We want to raise it to another level, and we want to take it into the future with us. Just as the ancestors gave it to us for today, we want to make certain that the people of tomorrow are aware of the tea cake.
Oh, that is powerful. I did go ahead and drop that link in our chat just so our members can go on there, learn a little bit more, order it. We did have a question about the tea cakes, though. One of the
Yes.
members or one of our leadership team, they wanted to know, are the tea cakes available year round or just this time of year?
No, we plan to make them year round because we want them to be accessible, just like you can get chocolate chip cookies or Miss Fields year round. we want to make certain we can have the tea cakes year round. So that's one of the reasons why we want to use it as a crowdfunding commodity to raise money so we can build a kitchen where we can make them year round. Right now, I had to hire someone who has a kitchen, but if we can get our own commercial kitchen, creating jobs, doing for ourselves, then we can create a business. Mrs. Fields created a multi-million-dollar business behind the chocolate chip tea cake. But of course, I mean, behind the chocolate chip cookie. But she had Randy Fields who went out and raised the money. So we need to be able to produce foods. And in order to produce a food item, you have to have and meet certain legal qualifications. You have to have liability insurance. It has to be health approved. So there are a lot of things that we need to do this. So that's what we want to do. But yes, you'll be able to order them year round.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then we are
Mhm.
almost at time, but this conversation is so good. I don't think many people mind if it went over a little bit. So, ladies, I'm going to turn it right back over to you with any other information that you want to impart to us, any kind of history that you feel we should be aware of a little bit more of.
Well, I want to thank, this is Dee. I want to thank Etha for bringing up the Christmas gift. Uh, I have a copy on my shelf. I've had it probably about 30 years now. We had that as a fundraiser and an information piece in Chicago before I came to Las Vegas. I was a board member of a group called God's Gang. God's Gang was an urban agriculture group in Chicago, started in the projects with um, praise dancing, breakfast program, and but eventually we taught the kids. They taught the kids. I was the photographer. I was the one that documented, but they taught the kids that when you got that French fry from McDonald's, it came from the dirt, and they taught the kids to raise the livestock. We taught the kids how to raise the corn. We showed them how you could take the worm, the water from the worm tank and pour it over the corn stalks, and it grew taller than if you did not use that to fertilize. So we showed the children the cycle of life. We showed them how to go to, if we didn't have quite enough, how to go to the market and buy some fill-in products. We taught them how to weigh, how to price the products. We taught them how to actually set up their own farmers market. And these were the children that originated, as I say, from the Chicago projects. And they then Tea Cakes for Tosh. Okay. The Christmas gift was the book that we had in Chicago. And again, we had a farm in Michigan that they took the kids every weekend. We had 10 or 12 neighborhoods, backyards that we were growing produce in Chicago. And we had livestock in the lower Illinois part around the Springfield area. So we taught the kids, and we were associated with a group called the Heifer Foundation that helped the kids go to training to become agriculturalists, how to go and actually tell them the whole story. So that was the agriculture part of the story that I was doing between the genealogy and Juneteenth. There was God's Gang. So I really want to thank Etha for bringing up the book, The Christmas Gift. It brought back a lot of memories, and it brings back knowledge that I had forgotten to share. But this is some of the things that we have in our history.
I'd like to say something. Charlemagne Rollins, I think she was a librarian
It
in the
was.
in Chicago,
Yes.
and interestingly enough, she was actually born in my hometown of Yazoo City, Mississippi. Her name was Charlemagne Rollins. She was a librarian, and
It
she was
comes in a
specially
circle.
yeah, she was especially known for writing books around promoting books for children. And
Yes.
and the tea cake was one of the stories. Yes, Charlemagne Rollins from Yazoo City, Mississippi. That's right. Christmas gift. Interesting book. It tells a lot about our history. And I think that there's an old saying, if you don't know where you've been, you really don't know where you're going. So I think these are things that we need to put on our list.
And we've got a couple other reference books. When Doc Myers was alive, Dr. Charles Taylor wrote a book called Juneteenth Celebration of Freedom. It was a little blue book that he passed out to all the governors when they signed the state bills. He encouraged everybody to get a copy of it, and it went out of print. And for years, we went after him to update the book because, again, we are ever researching, we are ever bringing up our history. And this year, 2 weeks ago, as a matter of fact, uh, after a year of work, supposed to start off as an update for Juneteenth, Dr. Taylor has come out with a new book called Juneteenth, The Promise of Freedom. And we can get you information on that. This is a good reference book. I know you can't get a good copy here, but I can send you the information. Dr. Taylor is in Madison, Wisconsin, where Doc Myers, our founder, was educated in Wisconsin. Doc was born in Chicago. His parents were educators. They went to Milwaukee, which is where Doc got his education. And Doc was a medical missionary. He was not only he was a jazz musician, classically trained. He was a doctor that opened up 3 clinics in Mississippi and one in Oklahoma. And he went across country telling folks about Juneteenth. Willie,
Yes.
very quickly, if they're going to
Let
give
me
us a
wrap it
couple
up.
minutes.
Okay, you know I can do it. Let me wrap it up on. Let's go to December 31st, people. You know that's New Year's Eve. So on January 1st, which is New Year's Day, we celebrate with what? Special foods. Black eyed peas. That was the traditional food of the slavery. Um, the foods also. I'm just bringing you up, but I just wanted to bring that up because so many foods come from our history. Juneteenth foods, we have foods for the that signify Juneteenth, which is the red velvet cake, the red soda pop, and barbecue. So when someone asks you what are the foods of Juneteenth, you can start with the red foods, which are red velvet cake. The red is for the resilience of the people. The it's also for power. We've come a long way. Today I served a meal. The Juneteenth meal consisted of greens, black eyed peas, okra, yams, onions and garlic, olives. What else did I have?
Hot, you didn't have no hot water cornbread?
Oh, the hot water corn. If I had a skillet, I would have. Um, and what we did was we sat and we fellowshipped and we learned about the foods. It's very important that a lot of these foods, rice, sugar cane, olives, a lot of these foods are traditional from the Mediterranean, from Africa, but these are our foods. These are the foods that we celebrate with. And the next time you sit down to a meal of barbecue, watermelon. Oh, did I forget watermelon?
Don't forget the hush puppies. The hush puppies that they dropped, that they put in their pockets as they were running
Yeah.
down that Underground Railroad.
Right.
They have the hush puppies in their pockets, and the reason they're called that is because they're items that
They
they
make
threw to
yeah.
the dogs to
Yeah.
send the dogs in the opposite direction. So hush puppies has its place in our history.
That
We have
wasn't on
stories
there.
that attach to many things, and Red Velvet Cake was a late comer. Red
Yeah.
Velvet Cake could not be made until someone came out and invented red food coloring. So it is not one of the original Juneteenth foods, but it is on the table now.
Can we put grapes in there? We need to put some grapes in there.
Grapes
Grapes were a
came in.
part.
Grapes came in California through the missionaries. Ended up in New York, and we do have the stories to tell also on the wine industry that we were involved in through the grapes.
Yep. Kale, mustard greens. A lot of people didn't. Kale. They mixed the kale with the greens. But that's what my mom did. My mom was a cook, and I want to thank you And those were the lists, and the people thoroughly enjoyed it and enjoyed how they celebrate all this time. I want to give you a history because Miss Tea Cake Lady, my great
Yeah.
great auntie made tea cakes, and when she passed away, I mean, she was an older lady, and we never knew. I said, we never knew. She said, "These are tea cakes," and I'm like, "What are these?" And when she passed away, we never heard from them again. And then when you brought them up, you brought back memories.
My first
Be-
tea cake was from Ether Robinson. I came from Chicago. We knew nothing about tea cakes. We had an event, and here come these little Chinese food boxes that she had packed them in, tea cakes. That was my introduction to that delicacy.
Yeah, I thought my auntie just made that up, but now I know. She called them tea. They were little round cakes. She rolled them out, and it was like, what is she doing? And as you explained how they did them, that just brought back so many wonderful memories. And
And I
when
think Ether said now she cuts them out. She rolls them out and cuts them out. So I think that might be a slight difference there. Am I correct?
Yeah, we dipped them, we scooped them out. You know, they say we want to work harder, smarter, not harder. So we dip them out. It's a lot easier dipping them out than rolling them out because it takes a lot of space and time to roll them out. But I wanted to say this, and I'm not going to say anything else. I met a young man who's a teacher. He teaches history at Harvard, and he got involved with writing a book on Richard Wright, Native Son, and
Mhm.
he was doing research, and one of the books that Richard Wright had written that was not published, I think it was called Black Sambo or Black Boy or something. And he said that that was one of his favorite food was the tea cake. So he started doing research on cookbooks. He says all the way back to the 1800s, there are recipes written in cookbooks that were written by black people. There Tony Tipton Martin also did a book called The Aunt Jemima Code, where she researched books that were done by black slaves, and of course the white women took credit for those recipes. They did not give the credit to the black enslaved women who created the food, because who was cooking for the plantation? It was the black women, the enslaved people. So those recipes were taken and they were given credit to whites, but books all the way back to the 1800s have recorded book recipes for the tea cake.
uh,
Yesterday, I spoke to a group that was, I didn't mean to cut you off. I spoke to a group yesterday that was the African American Genealogy Society. This is another, there's so many branches of Juneteenth and Black history that can be explored. As I say, the families were separated. The names were changed. In some cases, you had the last name of the slave owner, but when they sold you off, they changed your last name again. And when you got out of enslavement, you didn't want to have anything to remind you, so you changed your name to your occupation. You were a carpenter. You were a sawyer. You had, or you took a name like Williams or Washington that reflected other people that you respected and you wanted to be connected to. So genealogy is another way, another pathway of history that will take you across the country. The Chicago Defender, we had the Pullman on the trains. They went from the Memphis to Chicago. They had the Memphis newspaper hidden under the seats. When they left Chicago, they brought the Chicago Defender back to the South with the stories of what was going on in Chicago. And I have read some of the social work papers from the 1930s, tracing my family history, where they said, we're here in Momence, Illinois. Cousin Albert came down from Chicago today. He is now going over to St. Louis, and we'll be meeting with cousin so and so and auntie so and so. So these are other ways that you will get your Juneteenth stories. Not only from, and we are currently building a Wikipedia. There will be a Wikipedia. We are doing research right now. We will have a Wikipedia link on the National Juneteenth website, and we will be getting stories from all 50 states, and it will eventually feed into the national Wikipedia base that's worldwide. But we are going to have a Juneteenth Wikipedia where we can tell our stories, we can tell about our celebrations, we can tell about our foods and our recipes and our families. And then you've got the DNA that's going to start come in and probably mess half your stories up because you're going to find out that you're not the person you thought you were. But hey, Juneteenth never goes as planned. We plan Juneteenth. Juneteenth events never go as planned. However, they always happen. They always come out right. We
Yep.
you don't complain. We have this year we planned June 20th last year to be on the ellipse of the White House for year number 3. We found out a month ago there's a parade. You're not going to be able to do there. They moved us 2 weeks ago to the area where the Christmas tree is raised. They said you can do Juneteenth here. Well, that's closer than where we were. Now they're saying the entire White House area is being blocked off by the Park Service, which are descendants of the U.S. colored troops, and we're probably going to be on the National Mall. But we will have a Juneteenth celebration in Washington, D.C. on the 19th, following our 26th annual Juneteenth prayer breakfast that was begun by Reverend Myers years ago. And our current president, Steve Williams, is continuing the legacy of Reverend Myers and the Juneteenth history.
I have three things for you. I have sugar cane, cotton, and tobacco.
Those are the three you heard the most about. Yes.
The
And you
three
connect
things,
and you connect rice with the Vietnamese or the Orientals from the rice paddies. But we
right,
were there. We've done all of
right.
those things.
These were in the southern states. These were the money makers. These were the things that made the money back in the day when our people were working for no money. I'll say when they were enslaved. You I'm the one,
When
people,
when the
I'm the
when
one
the
that always has the
Maximilian
questions. I'm the one with the
when the
questions in the
Maximilian
comments.
textbook said that we were unpaid interns, those
Okay.
were the days.
Yeah, unpaid interns is what we were. But cotton, sugarcane,
Happy go
tobacco,
lucky, happy
and rice.
interns.
Well,
The
thank you
lucky
I
and
so
happy
much,
interns.
I
ladies.
see Gianna has come up. We want to
Yeah.
thank you. I think we're being shown gently to the door.
Yeah,
We
we
want to thank you
No, we
for
would
the
love to have you keep
opportunity.
on. We know, yes, a lot of people have to like go to like their next meetings and everything. But trust me, we have enjoyed this so much. And
Please
just a
invite us
reminder,
back.
yes, we would love to. And just a reminder to everyone that we recorded this so I know there's a lot of information that was dropped. So if you want to go back and like and listen and watch again, get that information, do your own research. Also putting their website here in the chat too to make sure you go back. You can also see their events if you're in the DC area. Maybe you could join them. And and one of the questions Dante wants to know, can you who is the author of The Christmas Gift?
Charlemagne Rollins. I think it's Charlemagne Rollins.
Charlemagne, one word, Rollins, Rollins. And I
In the
want
book,
to also just say we do have, if you can join us on Saturdays, we have a national meeting on Saturday, 12 noon. No charge, no pin number. You can dial 720-453-2464, or you can go on your computers and come up with uberconference.com/Juneteenth. It's normally a 90-minute meeting approximately, but if it gets good like we're doing here, it goes over time. It never runs short. We have committees for education. We have committees for economics. We will have our annual meeting in October. And we look forward to your people joining us. We want you to come in. We are all
Yes.
a family. And again, I want to request a copy of this video. because we would like to share it with our membership also.
Okay, we will work on getting that for you. So
Thank you.
thank you again so much, and happy Juneteenth to everyone. We're going to celebrate the whole month. So,
Right.
so thank you again,
I'm
Fantastic.
and
with
we'll.
you.
All right, y'all, you all. Thank you so much, and have a good night.
Thank you. Happy
Thank
Juneteenth. Happy Father's Day.
And June
Bye.
is Black Music Month.
Oh
June.
Juneteenth
yes,
is Black Music. Yeah, June is Music Month also.
we'll be
Okay.
celebrating that as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Peace.